Welcome to the magical journey beyond mediocrity, where the mystical and the practical become aligned. You're listening to Meant for More, the Seeker's Guide to Success, with your host, Seeker's Guide and Coach, Kristen Lloyd. Kristen guides you through mindset shifts to increase your consciousness and live your best life. So let's leave mediocrity behind and step into your magical, magnificent life with Kristen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Meant for More, the Seeker's Guide to Success. I am your host and Seeker's Guide, Kristen Lloyd. I am so grateful that you've all tuned in today for the show. It's so exciting. I'm so glad to be back. And I'm really excited for today's show. It's going to be so awesome. It's episode 5 of the Meant for More show. So we're into our second month. I'm ecstatic. And today we have a very special guest all the way from the UK. It is Louise Botwright. She is the UK's top female coach, award-winning entrepreneur, motivational speaker, and spiritual teacher. Using a combination of psychology and spirituality, Louise helps you to connect to who you truly are, understand how your mind works, and opens you up to a whole new way of being that creates new levels of happiness, success, and abundance in your life. And just reading that, I feel like, welcome, Louise.
Hi, hello. It's so great to be here.
I'm so glad that you're here. I met you a little over a year ago, and you are such a shining light. And I'm so grateful that you've come on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much, Kristen. It's really great, really amazing to be here with you. And looking forward to a great show.
Yay! I have a series of questions that I've set up to ask you. But because this is the Meant for More show, one of the core questions that I like to ask people, because the purpose of the show is to inspire people who have this inner knowing inside of them that they're meant for more, that they're meant for greatness, they're meant to do more with their lives. And every one of us who is on this journey as an entrepreneur or a coach or someone in the helping professions, we've all had our own journey of Meant for More. And I was wondering if you would share with our listeners today how that journey has been for you and when it began for you.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think it's, for me, really, when I look back now, I can see it began for me like it does everybody when we start out in this life. And I often say to people that I've lived 10 lifetimes in this one lifetime alone. It's been an interesting path and journey that I've been on. And when I look back now, I can see so many different chapters and so many different turning points in my life when I realized that there was more out there and I needed to shift gears to almost like go to the next level and really step into my full potential. So for me, it started out, I'd say, my journey in my teens. I took a bit of a rocky road in my teens and ended up going down not a great path at all. And I had quite a few years of experiencing a lot of different things that most people probably, fortunately, never have to face in their lifetime. But there came a turning point when I realized it was literally life or death for me. And I'd always had this urge and this feeling and like there was more out there. And luckily for me, that hunger just grew and grew and grew. And I was able to look at the life around me and realize that actually this isn't the one that I want. You know, there's got to be more than this. So I was able to shift gears and turn my life around, and then went on to use those experiences that I'd had growing up as a teen to start supporting vulnerable young people and their families to turn their lives around and really discover that actually every single person that's born has a massive amount of potential inside of them. I know that there's no accident that we are here. When you look at the statistics, for you to actually have even been born, it's an absolute miracle. And so many of us have a spark that goes out in our early years often, that we forget that we have. So I started helping people to remember that they were meant for more, and they are meant for more, and almost awakening that within them. And because of the way that we work, that the organisation became a great success. Sort of did some work with the royal family to recognise the work that I'd achieved with young people. Managed to generate it's over $1 million in the UK, about £800,000 to do that work in the space of a few short years. And it was incredible to see sort of these young people turn their lives around and the families light up in the way that they did. And it was through that journey that I realized, actually, this is amazing, but it's almost like I just scratched the surface. So I then experienced the world of personal development and spirituality, which took me a long time to even associate myself with that word. But once I had started to go down that path, there was no getting away from it, because the way that I started to feel every day was incredible. And so then I transitioned to working online and, working with amazing people and connecting with amazing people like yourselves. And the feeling that was being generated by this work and going down this path was one that I just couldn't let go of.
Yeah, that's amazing. You've had an incredible journey. I think in the teenage years, that's typically a time of self-discovery, but for many people, it happens not just in their teens, but in their 20s. So, and I think that there's this societal trend of, okay, you go from high school to college or university, and then you get a job, and then life is created for you. In your journey, what clearly the work with young people and your own experience in your teen years transformed you and kind of pulled you out of that mold. Was there anything, because that's the structure of, okay, this is what you do. This is what you do next. This is what you do next. What do you think was kind of the key for you that you weren't going to go down that traditional path? Was there anything specific in your journey, in this transformational experience that you had as a teen, that you said, yeah, that's just not for me?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that at school, for instance, when I started on the school route, I actually did really well in the beginning. But I was always asking questions like, why? Like, why did that happen? How did that happen? What would happen if something different had happened? And I was always very curious and inquisitive. And after a little while, that started to turn into a little bit of rebellion, because I always had this thing in me where if I was told I had to do something, I wanted to know why. And if it didn't make sense to me, I didn't want to do it. So that was part of what led me down that route. But even when I was able to, I was sort of 17, 18, when I was able to turn things back around and get my life sort of back on the straight and narrow, if you like. And I got a regular job. It was in sales, and it was a job I enjoyed it, but it was like I could see patterns around me of people that were really unhappy and really depressed and not enjoying their lives, not enjoying their jobs, that, the people I was working with were like wishing it was Friday on a Monday so they could enjoy 2 days off. And that just really didn't make sense to me. It was like you're waking up, wishing your life away to experience a couple of fun days. But you spend those fun days waiting for the next week to come and talking about, how life's not great for you. And it just didn't make sense to me. And it was when I was sort of 20, 21 that I fully stepped into that and recognized, actually, who says we have to do it this way? Who says that we have to do something that we don't enjoy in order to enjoy a little bit of time? And I think that my curiosity and that little rebellion sort of side in me had always led me to kind of search and seek that answer as to why do we have to do this. And I could see the patterns around me as well as to why people were feeling the way that they were feeling and the circumstances that were creating it. So I was like, well, if that circumstance is creating that feeling, why not change the circumstance instead of trying to numb out the feeling.
That's a pivotal statement, right? So to actually creating the idea that someone can create the life that they want and create the feeling that they want to feel around the experience.
Yeah. And I was noticing as well that with the young people I was working with, I was noticing patterns, and also through my own sort of story and the friends around me, that if people tell you enough times that something has to be a certain way or you're going to become a certain thing, they did. So again, my curiosity got me thinking, and I was like, well, if that works in a negative sense, why can't it work in a positive sense? And just because everybody's telling you that life has to be this way, why don't you start telling yourself something different? And then what would happen? And so that was the route that I sort of took. And it took a lot to actually start to make those decisions and step into that, because it was like going against almost everybody I knew around me and everything that I'd seen around me.
Right. And you want to hear a synchronicity? This morning, I get quotes when I open my web browser. And the quote for this morning, I think, was a Henry Ford quote. Yeah. Whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right.
Absolutely.
And so that speaks back to exactly what you just said. If you believe you can become something, you will. If you believe you can't, then you won't.
Yeah.
Either way. So with these young people, did you help them to change their belief patterns to craft a life that they want?
In a way, yes. But at that point, I mean, it was in 2007 that organization was officially set up. And at that point, I'd never even heard of the word personal development, crazy as it sounds. But wow. I started doing some voluntary work with a lot of youth organizations. And I could see people, these organizations were almost like treating the behavior rather than the cause of the behavior. And so the whole point of me setting the organisation up that I did was to mentor and coach these young people into seeing something different, into saying, actually, just because that person says that's true about you, does that really mean it is? You know, so we started to look at, okay, what is creating the behaviour? What are the feelings behind the behaviour? What are the thoughts that they're thinking that are allowing them to act a certain way? So the work, but it was in a really early stage of this career, if you like. And it was more of an internal kind of guidance system that I was like, right, this doesn't feel right. The way that this problem is being treated doesn't feel right to me. I wonder if I can come up with a different solution, working with the young people themselves to create something different. And it was a year or so after doing that work that I then discovered personal development and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, things like that I'd never even heard of before. And it was through that process that it absolutely blew my mind. I think it was in 2010 I did my first NLP training. And it was very much based on mindset and psychology. But during that training program, somebody mentioned The Secret. And I thought, what secret? If there's a secret, I need to know this secret. It was a film at the time. And so I then went and researched and watched this movie. And again, the law of attraction, I'd never heard that word before. And it was like watching that movie completely hit me as truth. But that combined with the psychology aspect that I'd started to study really started to awaken me to something completely different than what I'd seen before. And that was when things really started to develop and shift for me in terms of the way that I supported young people and then transitioned into supporting the vast sort of range of people that I work with now.
Right. So you are essentially teaching people now to consciously create.
Yeah. I think it's more. The biggest. I always say to people, if there's one thing that I can teach people or give people the awareness of, because I know from my own experience at most of my teen life and my young life, and even in some of my early 20s, I was completely sleepwalking through life. I was oblivious to the very fact that every single thought that I focused on created a feeling in my body. And the feeling I felt determined the actions that I took. And the actions that I took were what created this physical life around me. So now it's like putting the pieces together to understand that, and this hit me hard when I first realized that every single thing that we have in our life is a result of our creation. That was a really, really tough thing for me to swallow at that time, because my life wasn't anywhere near where I wanted it to be. And at that point, it almost put me in a fearful place, whereas now I realize that actually, when you realize that, it's one of the most powerful awakenings you can ever have. And it was like, once again, it shifted everything for me, and realized that I have to take responsibility for what's showing up around me, and I have the power to create whatever it is that I want. And that bit was really exciting.
Yes, that is exciting. And it's so powerful to know that you know, so much we can feel out of control by circumstance, by things outside of us. But when we acknowledge, wait, there are things that I do have control over, and I can change my reality based on my thoughts and my emotions and my actions, then that aspect of control is then set up in a positive way, because control is something that a lot of people think of as, oh, control. Like it can have a negative connotation, or it can have a positive connotation. And also people can feel out of control, which then seems scary.
Yeah, definitely. A bit the feeling of out of control. When I look back now in my youth, I was completely out of control. I was completely out of control of myself. I had no idea how to understand or manage what I was feeling internally. And the only way I knew how to do that was to take control, which was by using some form of substance or whatever. That was the only way I could control the way I felt, by numbing the pain. And I think that control is one of those words that, exactly like you say, that it can elicit certain things in different people. But I look at it now as being in a state of allowing and acceptance, you know, because it's like when you're trying to control everything, that takes a lot of energy. Yeah. But actually, when you say, I accept responsibility, like no matter what goes on the world around me, I can't always control what happens in the outside world, but I can absolutely control how I feel about it on the inside. And when I have that control, I can allow, I can accept, and I can create what it is I want from that space.
I love it. Allow, accept, and create. And I love the way that it's so much more gently put. I mean, just, you know, revisiting control. You're absolutely right. It takes a lot of energy to control something or to be under control. But when you take responsibility for what's yours, and then, like you said, allow, accept, and create, there's even in the language, even in the linguistics of it, there's a smoothness there. Whereas control, it feels very bumpy and harsh.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's that, you know, the words, that was a great example there as well. The words that we use are so, so powerful. And we think most of the time that we're not controlling anything. But actually, we are creating and controlling all that. You cannot not create, is what I say to people. You're never not in a space of creation. Every time you have a conversation with somebody, the words that they say to you, now words, you can't see words. You can't physically pick up a word and put it in a box. But every time somebody says something to you, oh, that top looks nice. Oh, your hair doesn't look so good. We're taking those words, those invisible things, and in our head, we're giving it a meaning. And we are controlling the way that we feel about that person based on an invisible thing that they've just given us, you know? And so it's like, when you start to understand and realize the power that you have as an individual to really create, accept, and allow, it is the world radically shifts around you when you practice this.
Right. Yeah, I know, and I agree. And you're so right, because when you take those emotions from a statement, like you said, doesn't fit in a box,
Yeah.
and you produce that emotional state, and I know you know this, our listeners may or may not know this, but you emit a vibrational frequency that attracts more of that.
Yeah.
Whether it's a denser energy or whether it's a lighter energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah. And it's that thing, like I said, people don't think they're trying to control, even when they're in a space of, oh no, I'm not controlling anything. But most of the time you are, subconsciously, without even realizing it. And there's some interesting research that scientists can now measure the electromagnetic field around our hearts up to 8 feet away from us.
wow.
And the only reason they can measure it that far is because that's as far as the scientific equipment allows them to measure it so far. So exactly what you just said, people don't realize every single time we have a thought, every single time we give meaning to an invisible thing, a word, it creates a chemical reaction in our body. And that chemical reaction creates a feeling within us, either a positive one or a negative one. And it has a chemical effect on our body as well. But what that does is it allows us to feel a certain way. And the way that we feel literally changes the electromagnetic field around our hearts. So when you think about it, if you're giving meaning to things in a positive way, then you're walking around and everybody who comes within 8 feet of you can feel your positive electromagnetic field that's being emitted from your heart. But if you're walking around in a space of anger, in a space of victimhood, in a space of revenge, whatever it is, people can feel that, and you can feel it from other people too. So whether you think you are creating or not, you absolutely are, in every moment on every day.
Right. Right. And that's so powerful, I think, for people to realize. So then if someone's trying to shift, okay, out of that, let's say the negative space, and one of the questions that I have here is, what's the first step to creating what you want? So if you have, nobody comes with a blank slate, right? But we can create something from a point of, oh, I want to create this thing, X, Y, or Z, whatever it may be. But if someone, let's say, is trying to shift, so there's almost two questions in one. If someone's trying to shift from, let's say, a negative vibration or a place of anger or discomfort or a lower emotional vibration. And when I say lower emotional vibration, for some of our listeners, they may know, they may not know, that's, anger, judgment, frustration, lower emotions. Higher emotions would be joy, happiness, allowing, whereas the lower emotions might be control, because there's force there. So how would you help someone transform from a lower vibration or a lower emotion to a higher emotion, or helping someone create what they want that's different from where they are?
Yeah. So the first step is to accept it. Accept what it is that you're feeling. Acknowledge it and accept what you're feeling. Because often we can go into a rage and we just feel so angry and we don't even know why we're angry, because we've not sat with it. And when I first started going into the personal development world, a lot of the advice was to, if you have a negative thought, you're feeling angry, just ignore it and push it away. But actually, I've been in places where I've not felt so great, and trying to ignore that can sometimes take you further into that place. So the first step is to actually accept and allow that feeling, acknowledge the feeling that you're feeling at the moment, and recognize, how have I created that? What thoughts have I allowed to sit in my mind to make me feel the way that I'm feeling? So you need to acknowledge what it is that you're feeling, and then ask yourself, how have I created it? And then, as simple as, let it go. Just breathe it out and let it go. And even changing our bodies. When we change our physical bodies, we change the way that we feel. So acknowledging why it is that you're feeling the way that you're feeling. Asking yourself, how am I creating it? Changing the state, changing how you're sitting. If you're sitting down, stand up. If you've got anger in your face, in your limbs, just smile. even if when we smile, we can't help but produce certain hormones in our body that makes us feel good. So it's about getting really conscious. So being conscious about how you're feeling would be the first step. Be conscious of it, allow it and accept it. Ask how you're creating it and physically do something to change where you're at so that you can start to shift and let it go. So there was a few steps there. But the first one is to become conscious. So become conscious of how you're feeling, because it's like what I was saying earlier. So many people, we walk around and we react. We're continuously reacting to certain things that somebody said or to the situation that's right in front of us. We're not conscious of how we actually feel, and we're not conscious of how we're creating that in our minds. So just asking yourself, I do this regularly throughout the day. I'll literally say to myself, who am I being right now? Who am I being? Am I being someone that's coming from a loving place, that's being positive? Am I being someone that's in judgment? But it's about that consciousness. So just becoming aware of how it is that you feel as you walk through the day and how you create that. What thoughts are you thinking? What actions are you taking that are making you feel that way?
Yeah. And when you're creating from a space of neutrality, so when someone's not experiencing anger, and let's say for our Meant for More listeners, so those who are in a space of, wow, I'm in this space, I want something different. And the first step that I would say would be gain clarity on what it is that you want. But what do you think is the first step to creating what you want when it's different from where you are?
Yeah, exactly what you just said is clarity. You have to, if you want something different to what you've got, you have to know what that is that you want. We live in a world where most people will tell you what they don't want. I don't want to be depressed. I don't want to be broke. I don't want to be in this relationship. But it's getting clear on what you do want, because we get stuck focusing on what we don't want. And in order to get something different, you have to know what that is. So it's getting a crystal clear image and vision in not only in your mind, but in your body of, how do I want to feel? How do I want to feel as I wake up every single day? How do I want to feel as I end the day? How do I want my life to look like? What do I want to be known for? What do I want my friends and my family to recognize me for? What is it I do want? So it's absolutely getting crystal clear on what it is that you do want, because otherwise you'll get stuck and you'll go around in circles and circles focusing on what you don't want. And when you focus on what you don't want, you create more of that. So the first step is getting crystal clear vision. How do I want to feel every day as I wake up and move through my life? What do I want to create in the world?
I love it. Yeah. That clarity, though, I do have to say, sometimes can be a process in and of itself.
Absolutely.
Because once you gain one level of clarity, then people may recognize, oh, I want part of this. It's almost like being at a salad bar. I don't know if you guys have salad bars there like we do here. Like, I want some lettuce and I want some tomatoes. Leave off the mushrooms. I want some cheese. Because there are some parts of the experience that people will want. And so selecting and being very specific.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And doing it from a place of, because most people, and I did it when I first started doing these kind of exercises, I was like, right, I want the car, the house, the da-da-da-da. And I was focused on things. But actually, when you're focusing on things, it's like you're doing it backwards, and those things can change. Exactly like you say about going to a salad bar. But when you look at actually, how do I really, really want to feel? Like, how do I want to feel every day as I wake up? Who do I want to be? Who am I? And then get really, really clear on that. And then look at, okay, so from that space, what do I then want to create? And exactly like you say, it's a process. We grow and evolve. Like, I think it's Tony Robbins who says, if you're not growing, you're dying, and that's so true. And part of growing is that we outgrow the things that we sometimes think that we want. But often the reason is because we haven't got to the root of what that will give us if we have it. So when we focus on material things, it's never the material thing that we want. It's the feeling underneath that that we're actually searching for. So if you can get clear on that, just asking yourself the question, how do I want to feel? How do I want to feel every day as I wake up? Who do I want to be? And then stepping into that from that place, it's really clear to see, actually, does that car really matter? Is that what I really want? Or is it that I actually just want freedom to be able to go and explore?
Right. And if it's from an egoic place, because this is what I've run into with some of my clients is, oh, I want the car because it's going to make me feel cool, or it's a status symbol, and that's ego.
Yeah.
So, I've met with many personal development gurus who say ego is wrong, or ego, edging God out. Let's move away from ego and move into, alignment or altruism. But if that's what someone wants, can that still be created? Or, who's right? Absence of judgment. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really great question, and something that is so, it's talked about a lot in the personal development world, this whole thing about ego. And I think for me, it's looking at why do you want that thing, and what is it that is giving you? And when I used to work with, when I first started coaching clients, doing my sort of coaching work that I do now, we very much used to focus on goals. And now I say to my clients, I don't really care about your goals. I don't care if you want to be the next best coach in the world. I don't want to care. I'm not really bothered if you want a $1 million business in the next 2 years. What I'm interested in is actually, who are you at the root of you? Who are you? Who are you being? And how really do you want to feel? What is it that your soul is yearning for? When you talk about fulfillment, what does fulfillment feel like to you? And when you get to that place, when you get to the core of somebody, that's when you can then start creating and being that. And these material things just come along as circumstance based on what it is that you're creating. So, when you're in a space of just wanting a flashy car for the sake of looking better than your neighbor, that is actually, is that really going to fulfill you? Is that really going to fill you up? And what space within you are you creating that from?
Mm-hmm.
I love luxurious things. I love nice cars. I love nice jewelry. I also love walks in nature and things like that. And it's about actually, where are you creating that from? What energy are you using to create that thing? Because if you're creating it from a space of, actually, driving in this car makes me feel really, really good. It's a luxurious ride. I feel nice and it fills me up. Or, like I say, are you wanting that car because you want to look better than somebody else? They're two very, very different feelings. And when you create, you'll need very different energies to create them with.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, since there's that duality, both sides, what stops us from achieving what it is that we say we want?
Yeah. So it all comes from the limitations that we have in our mind. Exactly like you were talking about earlier, that there's this expectation that you grow up and you go to school, you go to college, you go to university, you get a job, you work 9 to 5, you do what everybody else does. And we are, up until the age of 7 years old, our brain is in what they call the theta state. So when you are hypnotized, they take you into the theta state, which is a brain frequency. And until the age of 7 years old, your brain is continuously in that place. So what that means is your subconscious brain is wide open. Whereas now, as an adult, in order to access your subconscious, you have to be hypnotized. When we're young, we don't have to be. So everything that we see around us, the things that we're continuously told, that forms our baseline beliefs and values, almost like our blueprint. And that then forms how we view the world and how we see the world. So often the things that stop us from getting what it is that we really want were programmed in us from a really, really young age, based on our family, our parents, the environment around us. And we formed a set of limitations of what we believe is possible for ourselves. And as we go through life, when certain things happen, we almost like we collect coins in our bank to confirm those beliefs to be true. And so what happens is, when you go and do something that you've not done before, or that you've not seen anybody else do before, that feels like a really cool idea, for instance, start up your own business, It's like, oh my gosh, I can't do that because I always heard that money doesn't grow on trees, or people with money are greedy, or, all of these subconscious beliefs and fears come to the forefront of our minds that we didn't even know were there before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like having a filter on. It's like having tunnel vision almost. Mm-hmm. And you can only see what you've previously seen before, because the subconscious part of our brain that holds all of these fears and limiting beliefs, that subconscious part of our brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's false. So I'll say that again. So our subconscious brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's false.
Right.
Our subconscious determines 96% of everything that we think, feel, and do comes from our subconscious brain. So 96% of everything that we do is determined by that part of us that doesn't know what's real and what's false. All it knows is what we've already been told again and again and again, and what has shown up around us. So if you have a thought that I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, the more you say it, it's like a command to your subconscious brain. And that part of your brain is forming a blueprint to believe that you can't do what it is that you think that you want to do, which is going back to the Henry Ford quote that you mentioned earlier. If you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're probably right. So what you need to do is start shifting and looking at that part of your mind. Like, is that fear really true? Do I really believe that to be true? Where did that come from? Is that something I've learned? Or is that something somebody once told me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's really pivotal, because then shifting those beliefs from what you believe you can't do to what you believe you can do.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't know if it was in The Secret or somewhere else where I saw that it was scientifically proven, because they use this with sports teams, visualization. They use it with the Olympians, with visualizing the run,
yes,
or the sprint.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's proven that the muscles fire.
Yeah, they do. And they've done a lot of brain scans and things now as well, where they've done experiments where they've got people to physically practice a sport and then people to mentally practice a sport. And when they've tested them at the end, the same parts of the brain fire up and the same muscles do as well. And that's the great thing about it, is that you can use it in a positive way to create what it is that you want. So if right now you don't believe something is possible for you, just practice every single day showing that image and creating that feeling in your body as if it is true. And your brain will literally start to rewire itself to create that circumstance, to create that possibility, to create that belief. The more you feed it something, the more it believes it to be true, and the more it creates it. And going back to what we said earlier about our hearts, the feeling that we feel based on the images that we're showing ourselves literally change the electromagnetic field around our hearts. So not only are we reprogramming our brain from the inside, we're creating new beliefs, we're physically changing the chemicals in our body, we're also changing the world outside of us by shifting the electromagnetic field around us. And that's that thing where there's some people that you meet where you just get an odd feeling about them, or it doesn't feel quite right. There's other people that you meet and you feel like you've known them forever, because the feeling they're emitting is a familiar feeling to you. So that's where that often comes from. We literally feel people. Animals do it all the time. They know if you're scared of them, because they can sense your electromagnetic field. So using your brain to visualize powerfully what it is that you want and getting that feeling in your body will literally reprogram and rewire your brain to create that thing.
So, and you may have already answered this, but so once we're clear on what it is that we want, how do we start creating it? Like visualization, or like what we're talking about, or is there another method?
Yeah, definitely. Well, the first step is you've got to know what it is that you want. So like we said earlier, you have to get crystal clear. This is what I want. The next step that most people miss out is commitment. You have to be committed to getting the thing that you want, because I've worked with so many people who have, they've got really, really clear on what it is they want. They've gone and done their visualization for like 3 days. The thing's not shown up. So they're like, oh, I want something else now. Why is this not working? But it's like you have to be committed to getting what it is that you want. Because think about it, if you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, however old you are, you would have been showing your brain the same thing over and over and over and over again. You'd have been living in the same feeling place, the same beliefs for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, however long it's been. And for you to suddenly go and change something, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to take as long as it took to get where you are now. And it's amazing how quickly things can show up for you once you start being conscious. But you have to get committed. You have to get committed to being that thing that you want. There's no point saying, actually, I want to be the best parent in the world, or I want to be $1 million business owner. But actually, I'm not going to do any of the things that I need now. I'm going to wait till the money shows up. You have to get committed to doing the things now and acting and being that way in this present moment. And the best way to do that is through visualization. Every morning asking yourself just to take 5 minutes, even if it's 5 minutes throughout the day, and visualizing in your mind that thing that you want and really feeling that in your body. And then asking yourself, right, who do I need to be? Who do I need to be in order to create that? And then be it now. Start being that person, dressing that way, walking that way, talking that way, treating other people that way. You have to start creating it. So you have to get committed and then use the visualization and then take action.
Yeah. And, those are 2 of my 11 C's, which I talk about in episode 1 for those who may just be chiming in or listening in today. I talk about the 11 C's of a seeker, and that is, clarity, getting clarity on what you want, and commitment to the follow through. The other thing that I think needs to be brought up here, because this is a marathon, it's not a sprint, right? Is consistency. Because consistency is huge, and I cannot believe how much in alignment we are on this show today, because I tell my clients all the time, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. If you're in your 30s, just like what you said, if you're in your 30s, 40s, or 50s, how long have you been in the same patterns of thinking and being? So we have to literally, it's like a computer program. We have to reprogram your mind and your patterns, not just your belief systems, but also your action steps. So if you're used to getting up at the same time every day, and now you say, oh yeah, I want to get up at 7, but you've been getting up at 9 for the last 30 years. You can't just expect that one day you decide and then you're going to start getting up. There are patterns in place and there's resistance that comes up. And so being committed and being consistent with taking those baby steps towards like the visualizations, and then how does it feel to make that change? So I'm using the wake up as an example, but it could be anything. People who are writing a book. Oh, I want to have a book, but also getting in touch with how does it feel to write? Yeah. Because you have to write daily to write the book. So how does it feel to write? How does it feel to pen out the book? So taking those steps and like reverse engineering, right? Going backwards, is really important. So that clarity on what you want, commitment to the follow through, and then the consistency for the long term, because just like you said, 3 days of visualizations. Hey, Louise, it's not here yet. What do I do?
Absolutely. And I think, this is key. Again, going back to what we were speaking about earlier, this is why it's key to get to the root of actually what is it that you really, really want. Because if you're going back to the car example, if you're trying to create or manifest an amazing new sports car, for instance, and your only reason for wanting it is to look better than your neighbors, it's like, is that a big enough reason why that you're going to commit to doing that every single day? It's probably not, and it's going to take a lot of energy to create it. So it's getting really, really clear on actually, this is how I want to feel. That's the most important thing, because it sounds like a lot of work, but it's so simple. And when you get to the feelings of how you want to feel every day as you wake up, then it becomes easy, because what you do is you get up and you experience those feelings powerfully. And that gives you the momentum to stick with it, because it's like you look forward to that time of the day when you get to really fully step into that powerful place and that powerful version of yourself that feels absolutely amazing. And it's from that place that you will see things start to show up. But exactly like you said, and that's why I love your 11 C's, because it's like it's the crystal clear plan really of what it is that you need to follow in order to really create something magical in your life. And I think that was the thing that so many people don't realize, how powerful they really are and what a miracle it is for them to even be here. And if you only knew how much power you had inside of you, you wouldn't think twice about doing this kind of work. You'd be out there and start creating, because your life will drastically turn around.
Right. And that's where fear, I think, another, not to get off target or off of the topic, but another one of the C's is courage, because courage is how you combat fear. Having the belief system that you can overcome, that you will overcome. And that's where this conscious creation comes from, is this belief system, having this core belief, whether you believe you can or you can't is, you're right. So utilizing that quote again. So having the courage to overcome the fear. The next question that I have is, about emotional blocks and anchors, because there are many people who have these emotional blocks that maybe show up as fears, or they have these I can't, because there's this invisible belief system that stops them from, it's like what we use with dogs, like the electric fence. Like if we pass, if we touch it, we're going to get shocked or something. So how do we create emotional blocks, or what is it that, is it the same framework? How do we create emotional blocks, and then how do we create anchors that help us with the positive emotions, like positive anchors?
Yeah. So absolutely, and it's that thing. There's the great saying that fear is false evidence appearing real, because
absolutely.
That is absolutely all it is false evidence. It goes back to that part of our subconscious that doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's false. Right. And I used to be, before I started doing this work, I used to be really petrified of flying. I used to go on holiday every year as a family, but I developed this huge fear of flying. And I could literally sit in my living room and almost have a full-blown panic attack without there being anywhere near an airport, because I'd got myself to a space where I'd created a fear in my mind, and it's our mind that produces that. It's the thoughts that we think and what it is that we focus on. But it's what happens is that people say something to us, or we have an experience, and we then interpret that in our brain. And we then sometimes it can come from the simplest of words, or a statement. You're never going to be any good at that. And we hold on to that, those invisible words. It's like we hook ourselves into those words. And what do they mean? Oh my gosh, maybe they're right. So-and-so said that to me once. And we create this story in our mind. We create these stories which create neural pathways. So they create physical pathways in our brains that create fears and that create blocks. And people often say to me, how can I completely get over all of my fears? And the answer is that fear never goes away. Fear will never, ever go away. There'll always be something that crops up, because that's in our basic human instinct. But what you have to do is, in order to overcome it, is you have to go through it. It's the only way to know, actually, this thing that I'm thinking isn't true. It is not true. It's just a belief. It's just a thought. It's what somebody else has told me. It's the feeling I've got in my body, but it is not true. And so using the process that we've talked about so far, getting really conscious of, how am I feeling right now? Is this fear? Where is this fear coming from? Okay, that's where it is. That's not true. It's just a feeling I've got in my body. What can I do to shift and think something different and feel something different? And what would help me overcome it? So taking little steps through that fear and smashing through it. That is the only way to overcome those emotional blocks, because you have to get to a state, at a point where you commit to yourself enough to know that you are so powerful that actually words aren't going to stop you. This imagined fear that you think you had is in your mind. And once you let go of it and see what you can really create, and you move towards it and you start taking the action steps and it starts appearing around you, That's how you get over the fear. That's how you stop those emotional blocks from being held. Stop attaching your energy and your time to something somebody said or something someone else believes or something that, quite frankly, is not true. Because that's all fear is. It is not true. It's not real. It's false evidence appearing real. You're using your mind to imagine something that hasn't happened yet. Or you're using your mind to take you back to a past event or a past time, which means you're not fully living in the present moment.
I love it. Yeah. That's amazing. I love that because I think it's such a huge shift and it helps people to shift. So now, how can individuals use anchors?
Yeah. So an anchor is a great way to. It's basically it installs something. It installs something in our mind and in our body. We can anchor into certain things, like a ship. We can stick our anchor into that because we like it. But often, what happens is we anchor ourselves all the time in a negative way without realizing that we're doing it. So using anchors in a positive sense. When something good happens, experience it. Be fully present in the moment and remind yourself of it. There's a great technique in NLP. It's called the threshold pattern. And it was developed, the actual technique itself was developed when it was Richard Bandler, who is one of the founders of NLP. He did a study on women in abusive relationships. And he studied the difference between those women that went back to abusive relationships and those women that left and never looked back. And what he found was there was a pattern, and they were both running exactly the same pattern, but using it in a different way. So those that left, what would happen is in their mind, again and again and again, they would run all of the bad things that happened, all of the abuse, all of the violent episodes, all of the things that were said. And that gave them enough strength and created like a physical feeling in their body to empower them to continue on their path and never look back on the relationship. But those who went back, they did exactly the same thing, but they focused on the positive things. They focused on the apologies and the flowers and all of the nice things. So what they did is they were creating anchors within their minds and within their bodies in terms of physical feeling as to whether they would stay or whether they would leave. And it's exactly the same with us in our life. The more that we visualize a certain thing and we have a certain experience and certain feelings, we become anchored to those triggers, to those things. So there's little things that you can do. For instance, when something really, really good has happened, is really embody that and do something. Something as simple as like squeezing your fingers together, and when you're feeling really, really great emotions, will lock that into your system so that when you do it again, you'll be reminded of that. Repeating the same thoughts and feelings over and over and over will begin to create anchors. You can use it visually. Like in my home, I have like different things. Like there's a thing on the wall that says "Follow your dreams." I've got like my vision boards and a miracle book that I pull out every day. And so certain things that I use and certain things that I look at, whether I'm consciously aware that I'm doing it or not, my subconscious is pulling up those positive anchors of the feelings I had when I first started putting those things up, or when I started looking at my miracle book. So you can use it really positively to make this easy, make it as easy as possible. Put symbolic things up around your home and just to start with, practice the feelings that they give you. And then you won't even need to, because every time your subconscious catches it, that will lift that anchor within you.
Right. Yeah. And that's installing new programming.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is, and it's, because there's a lot that we've talked about here today, but you don't have to do all of it all at once. In fact, I'd probably say don't do all of it all at once, because you've had years of the same patterns. But if you just pick one thing that's going to make it easy for you, just to say, actually, I'm going to become conscious of how I'm living and how I'm creating. I'm going to every day spend 5 minutes a day doing a visualization, or I'm going to put something up on my wall that reminds me of a time where I felt absolutely unstoppable, like I could do anything, or just picking one or two small things that you can start to do gradually.
Right.
Will create such a difference.
And that was the next question that I had is, what's the most powerful thing that we can do every day to help move towards our goals? And one of the things that you said earlier on is not necessarily having goals, but tapping into who we really are and what we really want to feel underneath it all. So if there's just one powerful thing that we can do every day, do you have a suggestion of what that would be, or is it just too personalized? Somebody just has to pick one.
Yeah. I mean, there are some personalized things that you can do depending on your own preference. But for me, for everybody, the most powerful, simplest thing that you can do every day is a question. Ask yourself, who am I being today? Who am I being right now in this moment? I think I mentioned it earlier, but the most powerful thing that you can do is check in with yourself and ask yourself the question, who am I being today? And that will differ on different days and in different situations. But who am I being today? As simple as that, because what it will do is it's like shining a torch on that behavior or those actions or those thoughts, that subconscious part of you. And it makes everything, it makes you conscious. You know, you get to decide who it is that you want to be in life. You can truly be anyone and do anything, but you have to decide who it is that you want to be and check in on a daily basis. Who am I being today? So that would be my top tip, is to say, who am I being? Just check in with yourself. Who am I being? Who am I being? Simple as that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love it. I love it. Okay. So I cannot believe we are almost out of time. This has been so amazing. But how can people connect with you? Where can people find you?
Yeah.
What's your website? Let's start there.
Yeah, they can check out my website, which is just louisebotwright.com. I've got some sort of juicy stuff on there, and also connect with me on Facebook. I'm on sort of lots of social media platforms, Instagram, and it's under Louise Botwright. If you just Google that on Google or Facebook, you'll be able to find me and, you know, ask any questions, or if there's anything else that anyone would like to know, I'm happy to chat with people afterwards.
Yeah. And then I also noticed that just for listeners that you have a special promotion, just for listeners, a special one-on-one 2-hour coaching intensive designed to help people get crystal clear on what it is that they want, get clear on what's been holding them back, and developing a personal action plan to help them achieve it. And how can they access that, and what's the cost for that?
Yeah, so I've done something special just for those of you that are listening today, and you can access it via my website, or also contact me on Facebook. And it's a really great offer, actually. It's a 2-hour one-to-one intensive where we'll do everything that we've done today, uncover some of that, those blocks and beliefs, and actually create your custom plan and walk you through the process. And that would be $200 for the session. So if people want to contact me and let me know that you were listening today, and we can arrange that session to get you really clear and create a custom plan, and also help you break through some of those blocks and shift your mindset in a really powerful way.
That's amazing. And Louise is really, really, really fantastic. I think that goes without saying, but not only is she really knowledgeable, but she is amazing with accountability and getting people to where they want to go. So that is a tremendous offer. That is amazing. So I'm glad that everybody has had a chance to get to know you and what you do. And I love that question. Who am I being today? I think that that's powerful for all of our listeners. Do you have anything, any final words for our listeners today?
Yeah, I think, just that, to remember that, exactly like I said a little while ago, you can absolutely create anything that you want to, no matter where you are on your journey. Even if it seems like a really long road ahead, just start today. Just start checking in with yourself, asking yourself, who am I being? And just show up. Make a commitment to yourself to be the best version of yourself. And life just becomes effortless and magical. The fact that you are here is an absolute miracle. So make a miracle of your life.
Amazing. Thank you, Louise. And thank you, everyone, for listening. This wraps up another amazing episode of the Meant for More show, The Seeker's Guide to Success. To continue the conversation, hop on over to the Seekers group on Facebook. You can find us at www.facebook.com/groups/The Seeker's Path, PATH. And I look forward to seeing you all next time. Until next time, you are meant for more. Keep seeking.
Thanks for tuning in to Meant for More, the Seeker's Guide to Success. But the fun doesn't end here. Head over to KristenLloyd.com for your Seeker's Guide workbook filled with exercises to help you go from mediocre to magically magnificent.